Hi again, everybody. This is the thing that I guess I've been working on most this year, trying to contribute with Miguel and Sam and others to actually bringing the charts to the modular packaging to something that's more streamlined, much more dynamic, and hopefully easier to maintain. I think I should say just a comment from the outset is that as I'm learning, and I've still got my L plates on with modular, but as I'm learning about the application, it's a sophisticated application in solving a very difficult problem, and it's sort of large. There's a lot of Helm charts. There's a lot of configuration, and as we're moving to version 14, we're trying to streamline that. That's the overall, is to make it much more maintainable in the future. I'm clicking here and not much is happening. Let me use the arrow down key. Oh, it's there. I can probably handle. Which one? Yeah, we can do it that way. Thanks. Should give you great confidence in the work that we're doing on version 14. If we can't figure out how to forward the charts. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Firstly, just a shout out to the contributors. There's the list, and I'll go into that a little bit further. But look, this is just a pretty simple update. I want to try and give you an overview of what we're trying to achieve, where we're at, and how we think we'll finish off. So we want to take full advantage of Helm's capabilities, Helm being the packaging manager that we're actually using for deploying the Kubernetes functions. And we want to separate the backend service, something that David just said that he's already taken advantage of in the IAC, but we're trying to build that also into the Helm charts so that you have a lot more flexibility in the backend services. I'll get into the details. We want to support the Kubernetes versions beyond 1.21 that you heard Miguel refer to, cleaner and therefore easier, not necessarily easy, but easier Helm chart configuration, and alignment to the reference architecture that Pedro was talking to us and giving us an update on yesterday. So just looking at each of these goals in turn, let's give just a little bit of a flavour. We have support for common template function libraries. So we've moved a lot of the configuration of the charts into single places. Think of a little bit like Lewis presented yesterday with the snippets, where you can actually make change in one place rather than in many, many places. So that's the idea there. And simplified charts. The chart dependencies are now modeled differently with Helm 3. It's done with directory structure rather than the requirements.yaml. And we've removed a lot of duplication, again, by centralizing some of the libraries and chart configuration. Goal number 2 really was the decoupling of the external dependencies, the MySQL, the Mongo, Zookeeper, Kafka, to make that all separate so that you can have the flexibility to use not only different products, different charts, but so that they're not embedded within the application. It makes it a lot easier to actually configure and get the application running over different environments. And that is a significant improvement in upgradability. and it enables you to not get stuck on certain charts. You know, I mentioned the Bacona chart yesterday, which Bacona actually runs fine. It's actually a BusyBox embedded container within that chart that doesn't work on container D. Anyway, you can see that by separating out the back ends, we end up with a lot more resilience and flexibility. There's also the alignment to Moduloop's upgrade strategy, and there's a blog post that we've got referenced there, Miguel's referenced there actually, to talk about the upgradability and give some further background on the separation of the services. We also want to support the latest features from Kubernetes, and most notably the networking API changed in the Kubernetes releases from, I think it was 1.21. It actually end of life. So you got deprecation alerts here for months. We actually saw those, and eventually Kubernetes got serious, and then from beyond 1.21, the code doesn't actually work. I mentioned a little tool yesterday to actually give you an interim solution, but this is the real solution to this. We actually get back on the Kubernetes release train, and that's important. You see that with the note here that we need to get on that release train, because the managed engines, the Kubernetes products themselves move very much along with the same cadence of the Kubernetes releases every 3 months. They trail a little bit for support, but they're continually moving train, and version 14 is going to get us back on that train and keep us on that train in the future. And for instance, you know, container D is now a standard within Kubernetes for pretty much most of the implementations, and Docker is going to, or has gone away. So we're in, by updating the APIs and getting onto the later releases, we're also embracing those changes. Goal number 4, I didn't miss one there, did I? No, goal number 4. Again, under the heading of standardizing and trying to centralize configuration, we've got common template functions now. If you look in just a snippet of the directory structure on the right, you might not be able to see it from afar, but I'm just trying to highlight that we've moved all the Helm configuration tables, the helper tables, into one place, and trying to put as much function into that one place for all the charts, and then they pull from there rather than having it in different chart directories. And importantly, also flatten the directory structure. So if you think about something like account lookup services, there's account lookup services, the main chart, and then embedded was chart admin and chart service. Now we still have the same relative dependencies, but in fact, you actually look in the directory structure and you see chart admin, chart service, and that's flattened that. So when you look at the code base itself, you actually see right in front of you all of the charts, rather than having them nested and having them sort of buried. So that's that actually is a lot cleaner for both deployers and developers. And we're trying to align to the reference architecture, again, that Pedro presented on yesterday. So there's some changes going into chart names to represent the bounded contexts and to more fully align with the boundaries from vNext. And with the naming there, you can see an example of where the naming's actually going across to the new names. So there'll be some refamiliarization, I think, for people deploying Moduloop when you get to version 14. So that's all what we're trying to achieve, make it leaner and meaner. and move it so that it's much more maintainable and on that Kubernetes release train. That's the simple upshot of why we're doing this work. You care as deployers because this is the packaging of everything that people are developing, and you're deploying using that packaging. So we're going to make it easier and much more robust for you. Where are we at? We've established the charts repo and the initial directory structure. Again, I've got a picture of that on the right-hand side. It's a bit of an eye chart, but just to show you that there's actually quite a bit of work already gone on. Miguel actually established some example charts and example backends. So we have the MySQL, the Kafka, Zookeeper, MongoDB there in the example charts. They're separated out. And as we're running the components now and firing them up, they're using those external charts. There's the sample charts with the new vNext naming. That's the FSIOP transfer API service. That was the ML API adapter. So there's some new names coming, and I'm sort of learning this. So there is a little bit of a learning curve there. And you can see, if you can see the directory structure there, you can see that the BizOps folks are actually adding their charts into the v14 structure, which is actually pretty cool. We've updated the Circle CI pipeline. Lewis actually put in a little facility that we created to make sure that we're testing across multiple multiple Kubernetes releases now, and moving that Circle CI test is now a one-line edit to actually change the, say, from v120, 121, 122 to say 120, 121, 122, 123. It's now very simple and built in. So when you check in your work into the repo, it's actually getting tested across multiple Kubernetes releases, and that should keep us on the train very well in the future. And we've also tried to start again looking at automation. I said this is a sophisticated application. I'm learning how sophisticated it is. I counted up the amount of configuration values yesterday, lines and configuration files. There's 33,000 lines of YAML values.YAML configuration. A lot of that is duplicated. So one of the things I actually did is I said, well, can we produce the top charts? Because those who are familiar with Helm would know that you can have a top level chart, and the configuration, you only have to configure that. And that'll configure the next level charts, the next and the following charts. So it's a top-down configuration. So when we're crafting the charts, we actually craft the chart at the bottom level, and then we populate the configuration back up the tree. And I wondered, can we do that automatically so that essentially we're only maintaining the bottom level of the YAML? So vastly less than 33,000 lines. Can we do that? Well, it's not going to be perfect, but in fact, I have a populate values facility that I was able to use for that account lookup service, the chart admin, the chart service. Could we populate the top level chart service chart and have it work? And indeed, that actually works. So that's how it's actually checked in, and that's what's in the repo right now. So the top level configuration is done automatically from the bottom level charts. Miguel and I went through this. This might not be perfect. It might be a 70% solution, but it'll be a big bonus if we can actually do this throughout much of the code base, because we'll only have to maintain one level of YAML file. Anyway, that's one of the nice things that's coming from the v14 work is how can we make an investment in maintainability in the future. Next steps, basically migrate the rest of the charts. Finish off the work. And we think that what we want to be able to do is get to a base in version 14 that then we can run the TTK against. So we want to do the things that support the testing capabilities, the testing toolkit and the simulators. the rest of the core services, and that way we can start running the Helm tests that Miguel just demonstrated the deployment and running of. And basically it's just complete the rest of the charts, as I say. So the time frame is something I think that will be a subject of one of the work streams, and I guess we're looking for volunteers. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks to all the presenters. We have Tom, David here, along with myself, and we have Miguel and Vijay on the call, joining online as well. Our goal, as you know, is to promote or make it easier to adopt Moduloop, and also in the process make maintaining Moduloop easier. As we talked about some of the goals of the Moduloop Foundation and community earlier, make more maintenance of Moduloop easier. So this automation and infrastructure as code releases, all this is aimed at achieving those goals. That said, I'd like to open up the floor for any questions. I think John Mark and others had some questions earlier. Yeah, please. Please go ahead.
Hi. It's more of the appreciation, really, to express that. As a hub operator in Myanmar, we're rolling out this platform. Can you still hear me? Yeah. It's really nice that even for the past few weeks, we've intensively learning about this IAC, and we got to a point where the local operator can deploy it. We become a maker of it, and with the Modus box checking and making sure that it's going as smoothly as it can. So we're really impressive how far we've come along as far as the deployment of the environment. We've done it like 4 times now. So it's really amazing that we got to this point. Before it was so manual intensive, even cert exchange were manual, and now MCM is doing it. And we can see all the details going behind it here with the presentations. And we just want to really express our appreciation to all these, making it so simple to deploy that. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Then there probably were a lot of painful, probably not, but there are a lot of painful lessons in the past, but good to hear that you're happy with it now. Hopefully we'll make it even more simpler and streamlined moving forward. Appreciate kudos to the team working on making all these things possible. Aziz, please go ahead.
Sam, like this Kubernetes setup and the services, like this is a very good step in the right direction. I just wanted to check, like there are certain best practices that have to come along. Like I remember that one time we did a deployment and there was a certain issue in central ledger services, the node, and we actually selected one pod of it, and as soon as the pod restarted, the data that comes with the like MySQL was destroyed because the Helms chart didn't had a persistent volume associated to central ledger. So are we doing are we changing the structure in the Helms charts to have persistent volume for RDBMS and all these things as well during these exercises?
Thanks for the question, Asim. Yeah, I'll ask Miguel to answer that. Miguel, were you able to catch the question? Go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hey everyone. So those configurations are available on the Helms chart. By default, the persistence is disabled because most people, well, when you install the Helms chart by default, it will, let's say, default values. It's the assumption is you're using that more for a quick test or development, etc. So those configurations are there. You just need to go and customize the Helms chart and enable them. So all the data stores will have that ability to enable persistence. It's also worth mentioning, just a segue for that, If you're deploying modular loop in any kind of environment like a UAT or production or anything like that, I would not recommend using and remember, this is one of the things we're trying to do, or we're doing with version 14, is we're clearly separating out the backends. So if you're deploying modular loop, we strongly recommend in a production or UAT environment where you care about the data, etc., you should be deploying those backends separately. So any kind of persistence stores should be a separate deployment, and you should be configuring that with persistence as you require it. So just keep that in mind. In version 13, those backends are purely there for convenience and more for development purposes.
Thank you, Miguel.
But
This also continue, please.
Sorry, but regardless, sorry, just to say that, but regardless, you can still configure them with persistence if required. Sorry, go Sam.
Yeah, thank you, Miguel. Yeah, I was going to add to that, saying it also ties down to David Fry's slide about different use cases or persona, whether it is for developers, sub operators, or production. Depending on that, we need to have different configuration. And even in like older days, we used to be able to configure for persistence where required, but yeah, we should document that better moving forward. Yeah, thank you. Next question, please. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My question might be very basic, actually, but might not be that relevant. But in terms of scalability, the platform, if you want to scale to accommodate for a huge number of transactions, do you basically scale with the lying infrastructure, the specs, or the computing power, or you need to change some of the components to accommodate for a huge number of transactions?
Thank you for the question. Sorry, I didn't catch your name, but
This is Layana.
Hi, Layana. Thank you. Miguel or David, do you want to take it? Maybe Miguel and then David, you can continue.
I'll respond, and then maybe David can add on to that. So everything in modular loop is a microservice, so it's scalable. However, a lot of the limitations that we've seen in the performance testing is due to the underlying back-end systems. So for example, the persistence stores and the limitations of the IO as a result of that. So a lot of those limitations are about configuring your persistence stores to have the right kind of IO to support the throughputs that you need. So in my experience, that's probably the biggest challenge when scaling modular loop at the moment, is pretty much making sure your databases, your Kafkas can handle those throughputs. So, but the core services and all the components around that are scalable, so you can spin them up, you can have multiple instances of them, not just for performance, but also for high availability, right? So you can have basically components running in parallel, and they can also take over, etc., the tasks. David, I don't know if you want to add anything onto that.
Yeah, I think, I don't know the familiarity that you have with Kubernetes, but essentially for scaling, that just means that you're going to increase the number of replicas that you're going to have for that particular component. And then regarding what Miguel said about the database and Kafka configuration, you would probably look at different node types that would support those kind of stateful resources, and then look at configuration of those as appropriate for the types of features that Miguel was mentioning. So.
Thank you, David. Let me finish off by saying that we had some intense performance testing done by dedicated performance work streams in the past. And there were a lot of good things that came out of that. One of those was the reference architecture in the vNext, which aims not just to improve scalability, but also, as David mentioned, reliability and things like that. So yeah, we have some work to do there, but even now we have a good number of capabilities to improve performance and scalability. Is John Mart, are you back in the room? Yeah, please.
Thank you, Sam. First, a comment on the topic for infrastructure as a code. This is a very important topic. We worked with David and the team as part of our Mowali establishment to try and optimize our infrastructure. I would say the journey, at least from a Mowali experience, was quite hard because we're literally learning along the way on how we could optimize within the cloud. Why this is very important is that in many of the cases, we from a technology angle would want the best tools, rightly so, but from a commercial angle, someone is asking us, how much are you spending? And as you know, actually some of the AWS architecture principles, they talk about the cost optimization within the cloud. So what infrastructure as code enables us to do, bring up these environments fast, put them down when you want to, especially like the non-production environments, so you can be more optimal in your cost within the cloud. Mowali struggled with this. We burned significant amounts on this particular topic. So whoever is doing the implementation, I think would be very keen on them advancing on the ISC topic. Now, my question to David would be, from where we are now, of course, there's been advancements. You mentioned a number of scenarios where this can be used. One of them was the POC for a countrywide switch. Now, where would you gauge our readiness now on this stream for a countrywide switch deployment in ISC approach?
So John Mark, I caught everything, but the actual question, where would I what?
Where would you gauge our readiness? Now, if tomorrow I want to do a national switch, are we free, ready to use what we've done with ISC to deploy it? Are there some elements that we still need that are critical to improve? I know there will always be other improvements, but where would you gauge the readiness?
I would reference Din's comment regarding their capabilities right now, because I think that's the closest thing that would that approximate what I was mentioning, a POC, countrywide POC. So I think it's pretty close. It's in operation right now, and the tech ops team is maintaining it. So I would reference Din's comments about that.
Okay, so thank you. So why I asked that question, of course, we're having discussions around these kinds of projects. So the more we have something we can already reuse, optimized, the quicker these projects take off. Thank you. That was my comment and question.
Thank you, John Mark. So we are at time. If you have any questions, feel free to catch hold of Miguel on Slack or David Fry, Vijay, myself, and we can continue the conversation. Thanks again to all the contributors. Innocent.
Allow me steal some time from Simeon.
Probably an exception. If Simeon can make an exception for you.
Good thing we're in Africa, so we are allowed to steal some time. Thank you, Sam, David, Tom, and Miguel. First of all, I love how Tom simplifies his understanding for this and makes it easy for the business people here. But you heard me say this about 3PPI, that for me, it's a modern day miracle that simplifies how many fintechs aggregators get to find their space in the in the modular loop space. And we've had conversations with innovators in Cameroon, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Nigeria, and a number of other countries that might not necessarily have to wait for regulators, for big players to do their installations. But one question that keeps coming back every single time, and interestingly, today the conversation has been about cloud-based installations and all that kind of stuff, is are we able to paint a kind of picture for them on what costing could look like in a cloud environment, so that we help them make their decisions faster? Because honestly, many would really want to try, especially those who are entrepreneurs, want to really go out and say, okay, let's try, no matter how risky it may be, no matter how scary. I mean, John Mark shared with me the Mawali story and the figures, and whenever I shared them, they were like a ghost coming into someone's house, and they're really scary. Yeah. So yeah, but we really need to have another way of helping everyone understand and really have many coming on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Innocent. I was actually fascinated by the model presented by Glenn Brook on day one about pricing. Hopefully these will mature, and with real data from places like Myanmar, these models will mature and will be a platform for better estimations in the future. Thank you, Simil.
Applause for them.